romance, relationships, and financial fraud. And Kim Lazar is our expert presenter. And Kim, welcome. And I see the agenda looks interesting. Why don't you take it away?
All right, so thanks again for hanging in there through all of our technical difficulties today. As for expert presenter, clearly that's not true based on all of our issues so far today, but thanks for hanging in there. We are going to talk about romance scams today and why they matter, right? How they get started, who gets targeted, how the scam progresses, and talk about pig butchering scams and crypto investment scams, real world examples that I have for you, and how to recognize the red flags and the patterns that go along with them, and then what to do if you are concerned about them. So what is a romance scam? Romance scams happen when someone pretends to form a romantic relationship. They do it to gain trust and then steal money or personal information. The criminal uses the fake identity to build emotional connection. The goal is to, again, steal your money, your personal information, or access your accounts. It's psychological manipulation and it's creating dependency, right? So we're talking about this today because it's one of the most financially devastating scams out there. It's impacting people across the entire United States, across the country, and it often goes underreported just simply due to the shame the victims feel. Romance scam statistics. So victims of online romance scams lost more than $800 million in 2024, according to the FTC. And investment scams involving cryptocurrency accounted for over $6.5 billion in losses in 2024. And that's beginning with a romance scam, according to the FBI. And then just last week, I saw in the news that the FBI was reporting $943 million in losses in 2025. So clearly it's a growing problem. So where these relationships usually start, it usually starts on one of the social media accounts, maybe Facebook or Instagram, dating sites or applications. It could be a wrong number scam where you get a wrong number on your text message or phone, unexpected messages maybe on a WhatsApp or Instagram, chat rooms, online communities. Dating apps have become a normal way for people to form real relationships. So because of that, they're also a trusted environment that scammers try to take advantage of. About 30% of US adults have used a dating app or a dating website. That's roughly 60 million Americans. Usage is highest among younger adults, but people of all ages are using these platforms. Online dating can and does have happy endings. In fact, about 27% of couples who married in 2025 actually met through dating apps and or dating sites, according to the Knott's Real Wedding study. So the goal here is not to tell you that you shouldn't use online dating apps. The goal really is just to help you understand how scammers operate, how to recognize the red flags, and then to protect yourself while still being open to real connections.
So Kim, when I think of this, and it looks like you've got some information on the typical one, but when I think of this, I stereotypically think of the lonely old widow by herself being the one that falls prey to this. Is there a particular demographic?
No, there really isn't a typical victim. Scammers don't discriminate. It can be the young, the old, single, married, widowed, divorced, men or women. It can be a college student, a highly educated individual. It doesn't really matter. So what victims often have in common is the loneliness, right? Or the desire for companionship. This scam doesn't necessarily focus on who the victims are, but more what the scammers use. It could be a life-changing event like the loss of a spouse, or maybe they've recently retired or divorced. Scammers build on the emotional connection first. The money request comes later. Falling for a romance scam does not mean someone was careless, weak, or even naive. Romance scams work because they feel real to the victim, and that's exactly how they're designed. Anyone can be a victim. Awareness is the best protection, and why we are honestly here today. So these scams can and do escalate quickly, right? The scammers provide intense affection early, often daily communication. They might send you that good morning text or good night text. And love bombing, this is when someone gives too much attention, affection, or praise too fast in order to build trust and emotional attachment quickly, often saying I love you real quick or planning that future right away. In romance scams, love bombing is used to lower a person's defenses before asking for money or help. Common profiles that are used, you can see here from the list. Often scammers choose identities that justify being far away or unavailable to video chat. They may claim that they have demanding work schedules or military restrictions or international assignments. You can see I've got a celebrity or influencer on the list. I've had a customer that actually thought they were in a relationship with Kevin Costner and sending him money. I don't think Kevin Costner needed their money. So it just goes to show that, a person can be lonely enough to believe anything that they're told. These are just some of the common excuses that the scammers often give to individuals for not wanting to meet them in person or not being able to meet them in person. They could say that they're stationed overseas or their job keeps them busy traveling and they're not able to get to them. Or maybe they can't financially afford to buy an airline ticket to get there right now, or they're sick and in the hospital. The list goes on and on. So some of the reasons scammers start to ask for money is, I've got a long list of them here, but with romance scams, the request for money, it usually is gradual. Scammers rarely will ask for money right away. Instead, they focus first on building the trust and emotional connection. Once the trust is established, they introduce what sounds like a reasonable crisis or opportunity. The details of the story may change over time, but the outcome is always the same. Those requests are often urgent and they ask you to keep it secret, keeping pressure to act quickly without asking questions or involving others. The money can be requested in many different ways. They may ask for a wire transfer or a gift card. That's a big one. Peer-to-peer payment on one of the many apps that are out there now, or money orders or cash. For scammers, any payment method is fair game. They really don't care as long as they can get it. But they may use any one of these excuses. So why scammers want to move you off of that maybe dating app or platform that they met you on? Dating apps and social media platforms have a built-in protection usually. They monitor for suspicious behavior and they make it easy for you to report scammers when something feels off. The scammers know this, which is why they almost always push to move you off of that platform and start with the private messaging apps like WhatsApp. Or they want to do the text messaging with you, right? Once the conversation leaves that platform, those safety controls are gone. So, sure, the private messaging can make the relationship feel more personal and secret. It also reduces outside input from friends and family, giving the scammer constant access to you. This allows for those frequent messages, right? The love bombing and increased pressure and urgency. Private apps also make it easier for scammers to erase evidence. Messages can be deleted, accounts can disappear, and the proof that you might need later becomes much harder to recover. So, money mules and romance scams. Not sure if you've ever heard of a money mule, but romance scammers don't just steal money. They often use victims to move it. They may ask you to send money, receive money, or move funds on their behalf. Because they're trust involved, victims believe they're actually helping someone they care about. What most people don't realize is that this money is often stolen or illegal, and the victim's name is the one that's tied to the transaction. So that can lead to a frozen account, a closed bank account, or even legal trouble. The simple rule is if someone you've met online asks you to move money for them, that is a scam every time. This is a form of money laundering, and it's a crime, and so is being a money mule. So if you suspect that you've been approached to become a money mule, or you have unknowingly become a money mule, contact your local law enforcement to report your suspicions. It is never too late to stop helping criminals hide proceeds from their crimes. Most likely the money that they have sent you to have you then forward on has come from another victim, and they too are being used as a money mule. So the next type of romance scam is called pig butchering. And pig butchering is a type of scam that mixes a romance scam with an investment scam. It usually starts like a normal friendship or a relationship, and the scammer spends weeks or even months talking with you and building trust. Once that trust is strong, they introduce what sounds like a great investment opportunity, most often involving cryptocurrency. They may see that they are investing into it also and encourage you to do it together. The name of it comes from the idea of fattening the pig before slaughter. I know it sounds horrible. Um, in simple terms, the scammer emotionally prepares the victim before taking their money. Victims believe they are investing with someone they care about and trust, and the investment websites and apps that they show their victims are fake, and the account balance and statements that they're showing them, supposedly increasing their balances, right? Those are also fake. The When the amounts of the money that they have sent have disappeared, so has the scammer. The money's gone, the scammer's gone. These scams began overseas and are run by organized crime groups, and they spread very fast over the COVID years and are now one of the fastest growing and most financially damaging scams in the United States. One of the key differences from traditional romance scams is the speed of this one. Romance scams can last for several years because the victim is trying to maintain the relationship. Pig butchering scams move much faster. The goal here is to get as much money as fast as they can in short amount of time and get out of there. The losses are very, very large, and it's not uncommon for people to invest and lose their entire life savings to these scams. So some of the red flags with this one is, again, you're going to meet them online. They're going to bring up crypto investing or some other form of investing, but typically crypto. A romantic partner helps you trade that money. The profits are always going to look way too good to be true. They might add you to a group chat about investing. It's often going to move to a separate app to just, talk, WhatsApp, Telegram. They're going to have conversations with you about trusting them, and if you love them, you'll do this for your future kind of thing. And they're going to put urgency on it as far as, the deadlines today. If you want to get in on this, you're not going to want to miss out kind of thing. I guess the most important rule here is, you're never going to want to send money to someone you've not met in person.
So, Kim, it looks like you've got some examples for us. I imagine over your years as the fraud manager, you've seen quite a few things. Tell us about them.
I do have a couple examples for you. So I have a 64-year-old woman that met a man on a dating app called plentyoffish.com, and who identified himself as Mark from North Dakota. They quickly moved off the dating app into phone calls and text messages, and then he asked that she deposit a check for $6,200 that he was going to send her, and then wanted her to get a cashier's check and mail that to another woman in a different state. She didn't know the woman that she was sending the check to. She didn't ask any questions because this was now the love of her life, and she wanted to do whatever he needed her to do. So she did it, And of course, shortly after she deposited that check, the item came back against her account as counterfeit, and her account was now overdrawn. Of course, when she told him about it, he just brushed it off and said he was traveling for work. He would be coming to visit her soon in person for the first time, and he would make her account positive. He would take care of it. But again, there was delay after delay. He never did show up in person, and he eventually ghosted her, blocked her from all communication, and she never did see the $6,200. Took a while for her to finally understand that this was a scam. She didn't want to believe it because she was invested into it. And she eventually went back to that same dating app, got into the same cycle, and met another man on the dating app who was going to be her rescuer, right? He was portraying himself as a policeman, her new love interest, and was going to get all the information from her from this Mark, and he was going to hunt him down and get her money back for her. So, anyways, that didn't end well either, and we eventually ended up having to close out her account just to save her from herself, basically. The next example is of a 72-year-old man where he fell victim to a pig butchering scam. He moved money out of his 401k retirement account and he went to invest it into Bitcoin. So he ended up wiring 47,000 to Coinbase, which is a cryptocurrency investment company. And we questioned him in our fraud team. We got a notice about the wire and called him, asked questions, and he told us that he was doing this of his own free will. Nobody was coaching him, and that he had recently taken a course on investment for crypto, and it was a new hobby of his. We let the wire go, but then the next day he got a wire back from this crypto company for $45,000. This was unusual. This isn't typical of what we see. But this actually made him question things himself. So he called us and disclosed to us that he had been in a 3-month online romance with a woman who claimed to be a successful business owner with advanced financial credentials who encouraged him to invest in cryptocurrency. She hadn't assisted him in opening the Coinbase account and claimed that she had deposited funds into it and then was now pressuring him to invest his own money to pay her back. So, what we learned from that conversation with him is that the relationship actually started when he received a message on the WhatsApp application and that she had meant for someone else. So, again, he responded to her stating that, he wasn't who she was looking for, but it was the hook, right? He fell for it. They started communicating. It ended up in this 3-month conversation back and forth. She supposedly invested $60,000 to get this account up and running. Whether she actually did, I doubt it. But he had made several smaller ACH transactions into that Coinbase account before he ended up sending the wire. So he did have more money invested versus this 47,000 that he sent initially. And then they got into an argument from what he told us about this wire. And I think that's why she sent the 45,000 back as a show of good faith to try to hook him in for more money, which usually doesn't happen. So it had a little different twist, but it backfired. And he stopped communicating with her because she was getting hostile with him. And sometimes the scammers do get a little more aggressive with their victims, which can set them off a little bit and raise their awareness to the scam. So even though he finally understood that it was a scam, he was still struggling to accept it due to the emotional attachment. He refused to give us any information about her so that we could, report it to law enforcement because he still didn't want to get her in trouble. And then I have one last example here where we actually had a very well-educated business owner who had been recently divorced, and she had met a man online, and this relationship moved very quickly. It started mid-month, and by the end of that month, he actually flew to where she lived, and they spent a long weekend together in person. He claimed to own an up-and-coming investment company, and it was about to go public, and he promised high returns within 30 days. So he talked her into investing $400,000 with no written agreement, and she brought him into the bank to meet her bankers while she got a cashier's check to invest in his company. The bankers did have high concerns and pulled her aside away from him so that they could question her without him present. And, they wanted to make sure that she wasn't being pressured by him, but she trusted him and wanted to go ahead with this. So while in the branch, he went on and on in front of the bankers about how he was going to take care of her and her daughter. It didn't sit well with our bankers at all. But in the end, it was her decision, and she walked out the door with that $400,000 cashier's check and the new love of her life, and they went out the door. She then drove him to his bank branch just a few blocks down the road, and he deposited that check right away. And then she drove him to the airport where he had to catch his flight. Uh, Needless to say, something must have not sat well the way she left things, or maybe it was the banker's questioning when they pulled her aside. But she called the banker that evening after hours and asked if we could put a stop payment on the cashier's check. But unfortunately, we cannot put a stop payment on a cashier's check because they're guaranteed funds. So she did have to get her lawyers involved with the bank that it was deposited at, and it took months and months, but she finally did get her money back, which is remarkable. That's not usually the outcome in these cases. But I'm sure it came with a lot of regret and humility because this was out of her business account. So she did have to come clean with her board about what she did and the scam that she fell for. So I'm sure there was a lot of regret and remorse there.
Wow, that's quite a story. I think it reminds me of a friend of mine who has an aunt who is in a online relationship with a Japanese movie star. And for some reason, this movie star needs a certain kind of gift card that's not available in Japan, and she sends them to him. And everybody else in her family tells her, this is a scam, and she just gets angry with her family members, but she can't see it herself. I mean, so that kind of thing is common. And then maybe another question, let's say you do start to realize, maybe wake up, and maybe suspect that it is a scam. What steps do you take?
Yeah. So, unfortunately, you first of all, I guess I'd say lead with concern and not confrontation, right? Um, these victims struggle to walk away. They really do. When someone is involved in a romance scam, the feelings they experience are real, the emotional bond is real. And when you spend weeks or even months talking with someone, sharing the personal details of your life, feeling cared for, your brain forms a genuine attachment. That's why it can be incredibly hard to accept that the person may never have been real, even for very intelligent, rational people, right? The scammers, they use that love bombing, that constant attention, the affection, and the reassurance. Those intense emotions can override the critical thinking and make the relationship feel urgent and deeply real. So, for those of us on the outside looking in, it can seem kind of crazy that they're falling for this. But it's not weakness on that victim's part. It's how the human brain responds to the connection, right? It's accepting that it's a scam. It's emotional and it's painful. It often means facing betrayal and financial loss, embarrassment, and the realization that the relationship wasn't real. Denial is a very, very common coping response. It helps protect people from the overwhelming emotional pain of it. Hope is also very powerful, right? So when someone has been promised love, marriage, or a shared future, letting go can feel like losing that future all over again. So many victims hold on to hope because that alternative feels too painful. And finally, many victims stay silent because they feel judged. They worry about hearing "I told you so" or being blamed or having to admit that they were deceived. That the fear can delay getting help, which is why compassion and support matter so much. So, what to do after the scam, right? Stop all contact, collect and save all of the information. Don't delete anything. Report the scam. Contact your bank, any financial institution that you've been using. Seek emotional support. Romance scams involve emotional manipulation. So, counseling can help victims process that experience. And then, continuous education reduces risk of being targeted again. The items to gather before reporting everything and anything, right? Phone numbers used by scammers, all the names and aliases, any social media URLs, all the email addresses, anything and everything that had to do with any contact you had with that individual. The more complete your records, the stronger the report. So when it comes to reporting romance scams, again, contact your bank and your credit card companies if those were involved. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, which is ic3.gov. The Consumer Protection Reporting website at reportfraud.ftc.gov. And then if you provided your social security number, definitely reach out to the Social Security office. And then you may need to put a credit bureau fraud alert or fraud freeze, credit freeze on your account as well. And then I do highly recommend reporting them to the dating platform if that's how you met them, so that you can prevent another person from being a victim of their crime. Um, the IC3 collects the data used in national investigations, so it is important to report it there. So this just shows you all the contact information for the 3 credit bureaus, whether you want to give them a call or just do it on their website. You can also just do a quick Google search and get that same information. And then you might question whether you should do a fraud alert or a credit freeze. If you are just concerned, but no actual accounts have been opened in your name and you don't plan to apply for credit soon, then you can probably just go ahead with a fraud alert. It adds a warning to your credit file, but it does not fully block your credit. You only have to place it with one of the bureaus and they will notify the other ones. If you actually share personal or financial information with the scammer, or you have a compromised account, you'll want the strongest protection to prevent them from opening new accounts in your name. So that's where a credit freeze would probably be recommended. Completely blocks new credit unless you remove it. This does not need to be, or this does that choice does need to be done individually with each of the 3 bureaus. All right, so the future online safety. Change all your passwords for your key accounts, right? Set all your social media to private. Do not respond to unknown messages. Consider changing your phone number if you were communicating with them that way. And then you probably need to create a new email address as well. Scammers often keep contacting their victims. And also, once you've been a victim, you have a target on your back. So changing contact information and securing your accounts is a strong protective step. Stay safe online. Scammers adapt quickly, so stay cautious about what you post and share. Never send private photos. Scammers often use them for blackmail down the line. How to safely date online. Like I said, you can safely date online. People do it all the time. What I suggest is just limit what you share early on, right? Avoid oversharing personal details at the beginning. Keep conversations on the dating app unless you've established that trust. Before using any platform, understand how it handles their privacy and their blocking and their reporting. Use video calls to verify early on before you get too emotionally invested. Seeing someone help Seeing someone live helps confirm that they're real. Um, Watch for signs, right? With AI these days, you have to be extra cautious because we've all been hearing about AI, and we know that with AI, you can look at me and I may look real, but I might not be, right? And they've mastered the front on version and the side version. But what I've learned recently is they haven't mastered the whole 360 version. So have the person you're communicating do a 360 twirl around the room for you just to see if they're real or not, right? Take your time and protect your information, right? Go slowly, verify early, and definitely be cautious with all of your personal and financial information. Again, if someone avoids a video call or refuses to meet you or asks for money, stop. It's not a real relationship. And then, of course, lastly, remember that scammers adapt. Watch what you post and share. Be mindful of what information you make public, even outside of the dating apps, because they're monitoring everything that you post everywhere. And these are just some of the helpful resources that I've identified that you might want to look into if you want to learn more about the topic. You can look at the consumerftc.gov site and advocatingforyou.com. This site actually gives some great information if you want to look into some recommended books on the topic or documentaries. They also have podcast recommendations on the topic. And also, of course, AARP and IC3.gov, as well as connect.usa.gov.
All right. Well, Kim, thanks so much. It's so interesting to see the different frauds out there and the links that fraudsters go to, trick you out of your money. So, very interesting stuff. A reminder, if you want to ask a question, the three dots in the lower right-hand corner brings up the Q&A section. And John Cianci, he has been monitoring that area. Maybe we can get John to do a ballet twirl to see if he's an AI-generated image or a real person. But John, do we have any Q&A or questions coming in from the Q&A section?
Doug, this is the only angle you're going to get today. Okay? Yeah, we do have a few questions. Actually, it's a good one. What if you know someone you suspect is tangled up in one of these sort of scams? What do you do?
Yeah, I think at one time or another, we're all going to know somebody, right? Because that's how these scams are just rampant right now. Lead with concern, right? And don't be confrontational with them. Confrontation can lead them to shut down and defend the relationship. Instead, tell them you're worried about them instead of telling them that, you're falling for a scam and being judgmental. Ask them questions that, have you given them money, or are they avoiding meeting you in person? Encourage them maybe to take a pause on the relationship while you figure things out instead of breaking it off cold turkey there. Help protect their funds right away, though, while you're trying to figure it out, and then encourage them to report it, of course, once you've confirmed it, and staying involved and supportive, and letting them know that, this can and does happen to all kinds of people, and it can happen to anybody, so that they don't feel too ashamed.
Another question is, do some of these rules and guidelines apply to non-romance scams?
As far as the reporting, I would say yes, if that's the question, if I'm understanding it correctly.
That's what it says. Do some of these rules and guidelines apply to non-romance scams?
Yes, I would say yes. Any type of scam, you're going to want to definitely get it reported for sure.
Okay. And then another one here is, how does Alaris identify this sort of activity? I guess from that person's question, to kind of give them a heads up or some direction.
Sure. So Alaris does have fraud monitoring software that provides my team daily alerts on suspect transactions that are out of the norm for our clients' accounts. It might be a large cash withdrawal or an unusual wire or maybe a chargeback check deposit. And we'll reach out to our clients and have further conversations with them on the activity. Hopefully, we can get them to open up to us about it. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. Sometimes it takes multiple conversations to get them to open up. Sometimes it takes planting that seed with them on that first call before they go home and think about it and then call us back. But we do monitor things and reach out. And if it's suspect enough, we will deny a transaction. And sometimes we end up closing accounts as well.
One last one is as it pertains to investments and what do you see as or what have you seen? Have you seen? I imagine that crypto has increased as far as we know as far as popularity as an investment vehicle, but I imagine oftentimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's got to be one of the leading fraud type investments.
Yeah,
No?
it definitely is because, of course, once you invest in cryptocurrency, the money's gone. If it's not your crypto account and you've just put it into a crypto address that you've given, there's no way to get it back for us. We have no way of getting it. Law enforcement tries, but they don't always have success either. One of the things I haven't mentioned is the Bitcoin ATM machines, and that's another avenue that scammers use, right? They instruct their victims to go put the cash into a Bitcoin ATM machine. Once you do that, the money is gone. So I guess I would heavily urge you not to ever put your money into a Bitcoin ATM machine. If you want to invest in crypto, there's other safer avenues to do so versus an ATM machine.
Another one, with the advance of AI, which now fraudulently uses another's voice, it is recommended to remove, voice recognition as a security measure from bank and investment accounts. Is it recommended? I guess is the question.
Mm,
So with the advance of AI, which now fraudulently uses another's voice, is it recommended to remove voice recognition as a security measure from bank and investment accounts?
yeah. Alaris doesn't use voice recognition for our authentication.
Okay.
So as far as other financial and investment firms, I'm not quite sure if that's what they're using. I would use, a lot of banks now use the different platforms like the Google Authenticator apps. I would use those different platforms like those when you get the opportunity versus even the one-time PIN, because those apps give you a different PIN each and every time right on the separate platform.
Okay. Thanks for that answer and great questions, everyone. Doug, I'll hand it back over to you.
Well, thank you, John. And thank you, everybody who participated today. Good questions. And John, thank you for moderating. And Kim, especially, thank you for the presentation and the wealth of knowledge that you have and everything that you do to protect our clients and to protect our bank from the fraudsters out there. And I think I just want to mention to everyone who's listening or watching that this is an ongoing series. So every month we do a webinar, and next month's topic is money and travel, planning an affordable getaway without going into debt. So that sounds nice. I like the idea of travel, especially when it is cold here. And I understand in Chicago, it's not quite as cold and snowy and a little nicer than it is here. So thanks for that on the chat. And again, thanks everybody. Appreciate it. And fill out the survey as we conclude here. Have a great day.
See you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.